This series of slides illustrates the difference between real bullfights and just simply bull elk sparring. I get asked this question fairly often. The first step of a fight is when the challenger actually arrives on the scene. You can see here the bull on the right is the challenger, the herd bull is on the left. The first thing they do is what I call the walk along. The next series of pictures show this. When the two bulls basically walk along beside one another, they'll spin around and face. Sometimes they'll face one another and turn their antlers back and forth slowly. You can see in this instance, the challenging bull is bugling loudly. He continues to run along with the herd bull. This can continue for a minute or two before they finally will pivot very suddenly and lock up. As you can see in this instance, this was shortly after they pivoted, and the bullfight goes on from here. Now this differs from sparring. If you look at these two bulls, you can see they're really kicking up quite a storm. There's a lot of twisting and turning. You can see the power in the back of the bulls as their muscles hunch up. Sometimes heads push down and legs rise up as a result. It's just very, very strenuous. The best way to think of a bullfight is not like a sword fight, but rather like a wrestling match. And what happens is that over a course of time, sometimes as long as 25 minutes, the bulls will fight pretty furiously, and eventually exhaustion sets in. Again, many kinds of twists and turns. Sometimes they'll come apart and then charge one another a time or two during the fight. It's difficult for a photographer to get decent pictures of bullfights because of the pauses, the twists, and the turns, but sometimes you get a kind of a dynamic picture like this one. It's interesting how they'll shake their heads back and forth with one another pretty violently. In this image, you can see where they pulled apart and they're getting ready to charge back together and lock up again. Finally, they get worn out, and finally they'll pull apart like this. And the final scene, you can see that the herd bull is walking back to his herd after winning the fight. Now for some examples of bull elk sparring. The following pictures were taken actually in February, and you can see we've got a couple of young bulls here that are just sort of playing around. One of the things you will notice that's different with them is that you don't see the big leg drive, anything of the sort. It's kind of a tapping of the antlers. Immediately following here is another section, and this shows a couple of bulls in March. Here are the main differences between bull elk fights and bull elk sparring. First of all, bull elk fights have a build-up to the fight, starting with challenging calls and actually run into the group by the challenging bull. Bullfights are violent. Sparring just happens and it's casual. Bullfights are for breeding rights during the rut. Sparring happens all season until April, long after the rut. Real bullfights are rare. Sparring is common.